Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's August 19th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and no chart lessons on Friday, so this is going to wrap it up for the week. We ended on a strong note today. Crazy day. I thought I'd show you the daily chart again. As you can see, we came back inside the darker two lines of the original range, and we're right back inside it, and we traded with it. We actually pushed through there a little bit. I think most of this was during the overnight. And then most of the day we traded right inside the range here. And that kind of was, as we go to the intraday chart, you'll see we kind of had a range day in the afternoon. So interesting day. Like I said the other day, it was hard to imagine that we weren't going to go higher right here. But if you understand our rules, you know we're right back in the range again. Most breakouts fail. And even on the daily chart, no different. We failed, came back into the range, and we'll see where we go from here with this failed breakout down here. But we couldn't get. You can see we traded all the way back to the high of the range and couldn't get outside of them. Actually closed down off of that some. So we'll see if we stay in the range or if we end up pushing lower or exactly what's going to happen. But generally, when you trade in these ranges, you'll break out a couple of times in one way or the other before prices will eventually move on and continue trending in one direction or the other. So we'll just have to see where we go from here. Right now we're back in the range, and you can clearly see that. So I thought I'd put this back up just to show you. And I always, anytime I show this, I get a lot of questions. This is our envelope strategy. Uh, that's what these bands are. So if you're interested in that, just go to the website and you can look for it. But yeah, every time I show this, I get a lot of emails. Where do you get that? Well, it's on our website. It's part of our envelope manual package. So if you're interested in that, you can look for that on our website. So anyway, let me go to the intraday, and here we are. And you can see where we pushed lower during the overnight. We traded way down here, but we went right back into the range, and we just kind of chopped around inside that range today. And while we originally traded down and then rallied higher, this was a really strong rally that kept running higher and higher. And we eventually got a break and two legs up, and then we trended back down. And it wasn't clear that this was a range really until we bounced down here again. And even then, you didn't know for sure what would happen up here. You just had to kind of wait and see. Um, but you can clearly see it after the fact that this was a range. We spent the majority of the day in a range, and it was a volatile one because we were rocketing up strongly to the highs and then rocketing down. And that's typical. One of the things that I talked about on the mid-morning chart this morning on the website was if we do, I mean, you can see how strong this sell-off has been. If we do move into a bear type market here coming up, some of your strongest and craziest rallies will happen during those bear markets. Every time this market sells off strongly, it's generally been a great buying opportunity. Is that going to always continue? No, eventually at some point it won't. But until it does, assume that at some point we're going to find a bottom here and this thing's going to rocket out of there and probably trade to new highs again. So uh, maybe that's a while from now. Maybe we go into an extended bear market. Only time will tell. But as of right now, I think we still are in that sideways stuff until we figure that out, until the market kind of finds a comfort level and figures out which way it's going to go again. And I'd be shocked if we don't go higher yet. So we'll just have to see. But we are overdue for a correction, so it wouldn't surprise me at all to see a correction either. So I know that probably sounds contradicting, but this market keeps going higher, and so until it proves me otherwise, I'm going to assume every strong sell-off is probably a great buying opportunity. So we'll just have to see. But that's the reason I like to day trade, because you don't have to worry so much about where the market's going long term. You only have to figure out where it's going for the next few minutes to get a scalp, and makes it a whole lot easier, in my opinion. So I prefer to be a scalper. Some people do better swing trading, but my forte is scalping, and I like to, I do like to catch a runner from time to time, but even my runners are usually not that large. Generally, a 10-point runner is pretty big for me. Occasionally, I'll get a nice runner, but usually when it starts backing up, I mean, when you get days like this, sometimes you can catch a 10, 15, or 20-point runner. But when it looks more like stuff like this going sideways, it's really hard to catch a big runner, especially when it's like this, because you just get stopped out and you can't hold a runner. A day like that right there, sure, you can catch an easy runner on a day like that and hold it for a long time. But on general days, it's hard to do that. But anyway, let's back out, go through the trades, and we'll wrap this day up. We'll wrap this week up. You had to be patient this morning. Generally, your best trades are early on, but it was almost 9 o'clock before we got a first really good trade today. There's some opportunities in there, a couple of green ones. Um, but things just didn't set up really well. So it's just the way it is sometimes. But anyway, let's look at our trades here. First one I marked was green. This was right at 7 o'clock. Notice you already had a break of this channel way over here. That was back at 4 a.m. And then we rallied strongly, came back down. You had this yellow channel working down. You had the break, new low. Tried to go lower once, twice. That's a reversal failure, but it's on the wrong side of the EMA. And I mean, if you took it, it's a great trade. But a lot of times you'll get burned taking that trade. So I didn't mark that one. I skipped over this one. Let me go back to this one. I like this one, and it's green just simply because we've got the break and a new low, and we're so far away from the EMA. There's a good chance we're going to run to the EMA, and we may get a reversal and go higher. So these are those somewhat aggressive trades that will often pay off. But if you're not a very skilled chart trader, don't even consider these, because most of the time you'll get burned. Just like right in here, you'll buy and get burned, buy and get burned. I mean, you can see this happen a lot where people buy and get burned. But when you're that far away from the EMA, after you've already had your break and a new low of this yellow channel, and you can clearly see there's a little correction there. So there's a couple legs down on a smaller level. So you may attempt that one. Again, it's aggressive. Same thing here. You run up, and this is just a first entry. Notice you're just pulling back, although there is a hidden second entry, and that's a very small, low-risk bar of only 5 ticks. So you may want to risk that trade. Again, look at the move you got out of it if you did. So generally, you're better off to wait on the second entries, but if you're a pretty good chart reader, you can see we move down, you go higher, and you move down. So there is a hidden second entry in there. We run up, and you can clearly see that that's probably the midline by this point, and we run back down. And notice how when you push through the midline, you come back and test it before you go lower. That's pretty common. You'll see that from both sides. And that's usually a good clue if we're going higher or not. Generally, it'll test it a couple of times, and if it holds and comes back and tests it again and goes higher, then you probably want to go with it. But that's for another day. When we see one of those, we'll talk about it. But that's clearly a failure right there, but I don't think that's a trade you want to take. If you'd taken it, it would have worked. But we're in an uptrend. You can clearly see this blue channel. Even though it hasn't been confirmed, we're expecting it to be confirmed right down here. And sure enough, you get your break, move to a new low. And if you'd got a good signal bar here, I'd have probably made that one green. And then you move up, and you can see you tried to come back a couple of times, and then a third time. I didn't mark this one. It's a double bottom, and you could argue on a smaller chart it's probably a failure, but it just doesn't look that good. And this is an inside bar. Horizontal failure, we don't care as much about the signal bar. So that's another one. You might argue for that to be green. I didn't mark it, but it's one you could argue. But if you wait a few minutes, you get a true, notice there's a true 2 legs up. But again, that's a fairly strong sell-off to consider that a failure. But most guaranteed, if you break higher there, you'll get a scalp out of that. The way this market's been running higher every time it breaks higher. And so I liked that trade. It was a quick, easy scalp. You might have got a runner on it, and you may not have. It just depends on how you manage your runner and where you entered. But if you entered one tick above this, I'm pretty sure this is the one. I'm pretty sure you get a runner on this one. Yep. See, it misses your safety stop by a tick, or your break-even stop by a tick. If you went to BE plus one, you got stopped out on this one. But if you just used BE, um, you would have got a runner on that. And there's actually another failure right here, but by the time, let me show you this. Notice how it moves up, it turns down, and then it goes back up and then comes back down. So that's a second entry short that fails. And a lot of times traders get trapped on these engulfing bars. So when it turned back up there and broke higher, technically you could consider that a failed second entry short. So actually I take that back, because by all, that's really not a new low. Your new low's over here. So, uh, but you can clearly see the two attempts to go lower that failed, and you get this big bullish bar. And I think you're better off to wait. And if you notice, you come back two more times, and then you get a second entry long right here too. That's the better place to enter. And you can see then suddenly it pushes higher. The smart traders are going to wait. And there's probably other traders jumping in here, but the really good guys are waiting on this setup here. And you can see suddenly it pushes higher. And then we're just working sideways again. And we just went in this kind of real tight range here. But notice that you come back and you get a triple test right here. It's not the best signal bar, but this has been a strong move. It's right off the key entry point. It does close it closes above the midline. I tend to like this trade, and so I marked it just because it's off the key entry point, and you made that low right there. You test it once, you test it twice, and you can clearly see the range, and there's plenty of room back to the top. So even if we don't go higher, you got plenty of room to get out. You might argue for this to be green just because it's not the greatest signal bar. So anyway, I marked it blue. I liked it just because it was off the key entry point on such a strong move. And you don't get a runner on this one, unfortunately. And you do try to go lower twice here, but usually you don't count those in tight congestion like that. But it would have worked because it breaks and goes higher again. We did get a close outside here too and a new high, and so next thing you know, we're rocketing lower. This is a possibility. Notice the new high, and you're coming down. You try to go higher once, twice. There's actually a triple test there. That's your signal bar though, and it's pretty bullish, and it closes inside the original range, even though we push lower there. And you got at least 3 bars stacked up there. 2 of them have no body. That's congestion. That's a tough trade to take, and unfortunately, you just have to miss that. You could have looked at this as a breakout pullback short, but it's so far away from the EMA. And then there's a failed second entry long right there. But again, you're so far away from the EMA, you're having to go short almost at the low of this move. It's just never a good place to go short. Would have worked, but I think you're better off to skip it. And then, of course, you come down here, you get a break, and you bounce right where we bounced previously across here. And it pushes up. Here you would almost want to wait. Generally, you'd want to wait on a true failure, but you can see there's a hidden second entry right there, and then the failed second entry short. It would be a hidden one, so it's a little more advanced again. But the way this market's been rallying, if it breaks higher here, there's a good chance we're going higher again. So it's a little risky. You could almost argue for this one to be green, but again, this thing had such a bullish slant to it. Even after this sell-off, you had to figure that a lot of shorts had piled up here, and if they take this thing higher, which they did, you can see how all those shorts have to start exiting, and it just gains momentum. That's a very strong momentum move right there. And you would assume at some point you're going to get another leg similar to that. It took a lot longer to materialize than I thought it would, but you can see it right there. And look, lo and behold, we got almost a perfect measured move on it too. So, but it took a little bit longer to materialize. I mean, a leg with that momentum, you're just about guaranteed you're going to get another leg. But it took a few minutes after. Let me do this. After going sideways here, you can see we're working. But this is the first break of this real tight channel. So first entry, second entry. This is second entry long. That signal bar is not good enough, but these have matching lows, so you could go long above that one if you like the trade. You come back and get a higher low right here. There's another chance to go long, and then it's pretty obvious when it turns back down here we're in a range. Then it comes down back and gives you a triple test, and it makes that one tick lower and turns and goes out the other side. This is a really big bar to, I mean, there's 15 ticks there, so you may not want to go long one tick above this, but when it broke lower and turned up, if you know what you're doing and you're reading this chart right, that's an engulfing bar I'd like to take. And you might have even gone short here. I didn't mark this one because we still had a little bit of a channel working up here. So, but you could have gone short right there. When you're in long mode. But that is a good short, and you wouldn't have got anything but a scalp out of it. But it fails real quickly, and then you get a higher low. There's actually a failed second entry short there, which we usually don't count those too much when we're in a trading range like this. But at some point, this thing's probably going to make another leg up, and when it ticks down right there, I guarantee it trapped a bunch of people. I like going long there. I have to make that green. It's really hard to make that trade green because I guarantee most of you are scared to death to go long right there. And granted, you should be. But if you understand what's going on here, at some point we're going to break out of there and go higher. And this definitely is going to trap people. Guaranteed it's going to trap people. The shorts are all piling up again. That's why you get some of these big moves and big bars. But every time we got that back down in here, the buyers came back in, and finally the buyers recognize this little trap here, and boom, off it goes. That's a nice move there too. But it's definitely aggressive because it could fail and turn back down. It's just the way it goes. And generally we don't really look at traps in this kind of stuff. But with this overall upward bias that we've had most of the day, and look like it's trying to start back again, then there's a good chance we can go higher. And all the way up in here, we're too overdone. And you come back down. This is the first break of this. Although this is a range, so it's possible prices could go lower, but by the time this set up, it's just too congestive. And then you get a reversal back to the upside. I didn't draw this one, but there's actually a little channel working down. You get a break, two legs to a new low, and then it bounces, and you get a first entry short, and then it pushes through there and it pulls back. You get a second entry short, it fails and goes higher. I like going long right there. And you possibly could go long when it pushed through there, however you wanted to play it. But then you get a break, new high, and then you're working lower again. Now this is a nice reversal here. Notice that you push back down, you try to go higher once, try to go higher twice. It fails. I like going short there because you'll probably get another leg down like that. It's starting. This is when you could. Actually, you still didn't know this was going to be a range yet. You probably didn't have an idea till here, and then you couldn't be sure that this was going to act as resistance still even up here. You just knew you had some strong support. But you can see by the time you drew that how it's working off this midline. So there's some clues here, but you need to be a pretty good chart reader to say, hey, I'm pretty sure this is a range by this point. But yeah, we had the failure there, and you come back, you get a first entry, and then you get a second entry short, and off it's going again. Too far away from the EMA here. And then you're just chopping sideways again. You do get a failed breakout here, but your signal bar is too bullish. Zoom in a little more. It's a shame because that's a nice move down. It is a second entry too, but it's a failed break higher and the first break of this trend. So you're looking for a move lower, but you just don't get a setup there. And you're bouncing out of there, and then you're just going sideways again. But there's your triple test. Very bearish bar. I like going short there just to try to get a scalp back to here, and maybe it pushes on through on that failed breakout, but it doesn't. It actually reverses. But you don't get a chance to go long there because that's your signal bar and it's too bearish. And you do get some turns down, but you're just way too far away from the EMA here. And there we go. We're rocketing up again. Um, and you do get a first entry and then a second entry long here. This may make a new high, but it's still being off that trend line. You could trade it as a high or low as well. It still kind of looks like two legs, but you could trade it as a high or low. And then you get a failure here, again off the key entry point. You got to go long right at the high, but you're expecting prices to come back to at least to the high of this possible range. So you still got plenty of room. So I like that one. It's a little aggressive. Of course, we get up here and you get a little that trap that breaks higher and turns down. I don't think I'd go short right there. One tick below that huge bar that's 18 ticks. But when it breaks higher and turns and when it breaks lower right there, you might drop a limit order a couple of ticks back just to make sure. There's probably enough room to get out before the EMA anyway, but you're overdue to come back to it. So that's a fairly straightforward trade with expectations of what's going to happen there if you've got enough room to scalp out. So if you don't, let it break lower and drop a limit order and see if it'll back up and fill you. But you probably could have just put your sales stop right there and been all right. I mean, I know you would have been all right because look where it goes, but you don't know that ahead of time. So in real time, you need to have room to get out before that EMA. And of course, the bottom falls out of it. And then you try to go higher once, twice. That's clearly two legs back. Nice bearish bar. It's just a first entry short. You could look at it as a failure, although it's not a perfect failure the way that we like to see them set up. But with that bearish bar and two legs back, and that's the first break of this trend channel, there's a good chance we're going lower. So I like that trade. It's a little aggressive because it doesn't set up perfectly. And then you get a second entry long triggers down here, but that's just too congestive. It's right off the midline of the channel. You can see that blue line there. And you have gotten a close outside and two legs down as well. It's a little odd two legs down because we actually got two legs up there. So, you know, originally when it went lower here, you probably would have been looking for a measured move, which that puts you down here. And you can see we just couldn't get through that midline before it bounced and went higher. And we didn't make that measured move. So that's 23 minutes, and I went through some of them pretty quickly. So this is a crazy day. You know, maybe the volatility, some of you have been whining about the volatility being so low and very low volume and just very methodical. Well, you got what you wished for, so just be careful. These markets the good thing about it is if you get it right on most of these, on a market like this, it's easy to get a runner and some nice runners. But if you get it wrong, you get stopped out really quickly. And if you are not very disciplined and you try to give it some more room, you can get burned big time. Because, I mean, I can see people trying to pick trying to pick tops here and then getting whipsawed and then trying to go long and then it's selling off. Well, I'm going to give it a little more room. So it's because it's probably going to go higher. And next thing you know, it's just zooming down on them. And just about the time you can't take the pain anymore and you exit down here, then it goes right back to where you thought it would. That's what happens to most weak traders and new traders, inexperienced traders. They're buying up here and they're selling down here. They're buying up here and they're selling down here, and they're buying up here and selling, and they just get chopped all up. And then they're trying to sell this all the way up, and then they finally decide to buy, and boom, they're just always on the wrong side because they're using common sense, and this market does not move with common sense. If you try to trade with common sense that normally serves you very well in life, it'll murder you in trading. It'll take, it'll take all your money and your shirt too. So don't rely on common sense for your trading. Follow the rules. We give you a set of rules for a reason. They're hard to follow when you're new to this because they don't fit common sense. But if you just stick to them and learn to trust them, eventually you can start trading this market properly. But anyway, we're at 25 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this week up. I hope you had a good trading week. I hope you have a good day tomorrow. Have a good weekend, and we'll be back again to do it Monday. Actually, there's a slight chance I've been invited to go on a fishing trip Monday. I don't think I'm going to go. It's just too short a notice for me, and so I'll probably be in here Monday and trading. But if for some reason you don't hear from me Monday and you don't see a chart lesson sometime by the end of the day, you'll know I probably went on that fishing trip. So we'll just have to see. At this point, I'm leaning towards I'm probably not going on such short notice, but I'll just have to see. I may change my mind over the weekend. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it Monday. And if I go on the fishing trip, it'll probably be Wednesday or Thursday before I'm back. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.